Yeah. That's not what I'm familiar with.
Calling to order the City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission. Determining we do have quorum. We are mixing Mr. Dick Freegee, but we don't need him for quorum, and he did tell us he'd be out of town. First on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I am hoping everyone got a chance to take a look at the minutes, see if there's any corrections or anything needed from our last month's meeting.
Move minutes be accepted.
Second.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimous.
Well done.
Next on the agenda is the approval of claims and purchase orders for payment. Mr. Starnes, can you walk us through these claims and purchase orders, please, sir?
Sure. I think the only thing that's not normally seen month to month is payment of a bond for Bruce Kimmery as a commissioner. That I don't know. I think we've talked about this before in prior years. And yours is just on a different schedule. I think you're all bonded, is my understanding, relative to your work here on the commission.
Everybody on the
I think yours cycles a little bit differently than everybody else's. I don't know why that is.
I'm confused.
That's a good question.
What's the bond for?
It's relative to I think potential liability for handling approving public funds, expenditure of public funds. So it's sort of a type of insurance.
Oh, okay. So it's like the expenses of having us on the commission.
Yeah. I think the city. I think the city pays for that somehow, but you're all covered essentially with a bond, just in case there were to be some sort of malfeasance and there needed to be.
Okay.
It's really protection for you all,
I was just hoping.
and for the city as well, given that
Gotta pay your
they're
bond to
public
get you out.
funds.
Okay.
And
Thought.
again, I think that you each have the same kind of bond. Bruce is on a different.
Schedule.
His renews on a different schedule than the rest of you. We don't know why that is, but that's why his is standing alone. So, apart from that, any other questions?
Motion to approve.
All right, do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right.
Okay, we're going to move down to the staff report, which is nice size today. Mr. Starnes, can you slowly walk us through this to make sure we understand every detail?
Yes, so long as I can see through the coffee I just spilled on my agenda. So far, I think I can. Let's start with, actually, I'm going to add a new item here under the Trades District discussion point, literally this afternoon, about an hour ago, maybe an hour and a half. Joe Murphy, who is the mayor's deputy chief of staff, somewhat recent addition to staff, who's been great to have on board, does a lot of work on the city's social media accounts and works on a lot of projects, including a next level trails grant application that's going in for a really key piece of trail infrastructure, and otherwise general super helpful, smart person to have around. Got a phone call today from a company called Cook Air that does prefabricated HVAC components. They are a supplier to Williams Comfort Air, among others. Just closed on the purchase of a property on Cruz Drive, which is just north of Allen Street off of Sellers there, right in the heart kind of the Trades District, north of the former Green Bean space there in the back corner by the billboard, and had heard heard the Williams Comfort Air announcement and talk about Trades District, and was excited to be a part of that, and have reached out. So Joe and I will be meeting them, some of their leadership for coffee on Monday to see what they're about. But I think just a good story, good news that this is a purely a market thing. This is the first we've heard from them, and they've already bought property here. So I think it's exciting to see some of that strategy really kind of starting to take shape and make some sense, even on a market level, and to see some genuine excitement on the part of some of these users to be a part of something that's branded a trades district and part of a strategy in that regard. So I'll let you know at the next month's meeting what I hear from, what I learned from our meeting with those folks. But again, some good, Cook Air is the company.
C-O-O-K or K-E?
I don't know.
K-O-C-H.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It was a phone call, so I've not seen a
Great.
logo or business card yet. So it'll be good to get to know them, and they're excited to be nearby, and good symbiotic relationship with Williams. It's already a good customer. So beyond that, on the 3G project, things are progressing. A lot of the due diligence is underway. I've, pursuant to the authorization from last meeting, engaged USI consultants here on 56th Street to assist with evaluation of site planning items and to do a traffic study as part of how that site gets oriented and situated. That I think will be good expertise. The 3G group is using Schneider Engineering, so we've got some good local and current architecture, which is also here in Lawrence. So some good local groups involved in this project, and I think having USI working for the commission as a counterpart to Schneider on the company side will help us make sure we get the site and the layout right there. I think we are looked to close on transfer of the property in a little over a month, probably. So we're targeting early December at this point. So all on track. I'm in frequent contact with the 3G team and its partners to keep that moving. So I'm encouraged. Things are certainly progressing.
Okay, occupancy for them 2020 or early 2021?
The current construction schedule has them moving in September of 2020.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, a little less than a year from now. So let's see. Oh, so moving on to item B, I have a meeting this Thursday. This is just really an update. I think we've talked a little bit about, there's a company in Lawrence called InPower that's an electrical contractor that, interestingly, I've met them and toured their facility, and they operate immediately next door to an Indiana Electrical Contractors outlet where they do training and certification programs for electricians. They like being effectively co-located. There's separate tenants in a warehouse on Demi Drive, but they're next door, and that's helped them build a pipeline of employees and talent for their company. I think they would like to. They're both looking at expansion options, or really InPower is, but would like to incorporate IEC as a component of that. So I am meeting with the leadership of InPower and the IEDC and Develop Indy on Thursday about their thoughts about potential options in Lawrence. So I'll let you know how that goes in next month's meeting, but wanted you to know that was happening. It'd be good to have another, I think, potentially very impactful development or project related to our trade strategy in retention and expansion of a current local business. The last sort of, again, another, I think, positive point on the trades district, especially following, I want to say maybe this came out of even the mayoral town hall or other communication about the trades district. Of course, we've discussed the concept with MSDLT going back several years. We know that Lawrence Township Schools offers trades-related education at the secondary level through McKinsey Career Center, which of course is a world-class, phenomenal facility. so we've talked to them about our trade strategy and how there could be some good relationship between those two parties in terms of maybe placement for jobs or apprenticeships or other types of symbiotic cooperation opportunities. And following I think, again, recent news about traction in the trades strategy, the school corporation is, I think, putting together a joint sort of task force commission about how their trades programs, through their trades career programs, could be ramped up and expanded and really shake hands well with our trade strategy moving forward. So Joe Murphy, that I mentioned earlier, and I will be attending those meetings, as they're including some key MSDLT staff and others to try to start to plan for the future of that program and where it lives, how it functions, what partnerships could be made around it to really kind of enhance that as a path to a good gainful career in the trades for secondary students in Lawrence Township. So I'm very encouraged. This was, again, something that we've talked about at a certain level with the administration of the school corporation going back a couple of years, but to see them really kind of get excited about it and initiate kind of this joint council to really plan for the future is I think really encouraging. It could be a great asset to the strategy and to the city and the township as a whole for a lot of years to come. So I'll let you know how those meetings go. I think the first one is at the end of this month. So we'll have that first meeting prior to next RDC meeting. I'll be able to update you about how that goes and who's taking part in those meetings and potential direction. But so stay tuned. But again, I'm excited and encouraged about the level of engagement there. Moving on to Williams Comfort Air. I think we covered last time that they did close on acquisition of the real estate. In the interim, Mayor Collier and Jason Fenwick, the deputy mayor, and Joe Murphy and I met with the current ownership of Williams Comfort Air is actually it's a family affair. It's a father and two of his sons that own Williams Comfort Air, the umbrella. So we got to have lunch with them and hear about their history and their company, which was, I think, a lot of fun. Good, built some good rapport between the staffs there. We're excited to have them here. Their remodel of that building will be pretty substantial. They'll be building out a lot of office in what is currently industrial space, and shifting a lot of employees here as their real sort of headquarters in a visible way. I don't know if any of you happened to catch, we did put out a press release that was picked up by the IBJ, made the 8 at 8 last week, which was just fun to read some positive news about economic development in Lawrence. So obviously a good, longstanding, visible company. They're excited to be here, so we're excited to have them. Then jumping down to the Franklin Road Marsh rezoning we talked about last meeting, that has been postponed, continued. So it did not move forward in the middle of this month on appeal to the Metropolitan Development Commission as anticipated. I think they have mutually agreed on asking for more time with the DMD staff. So I'll keep you posted on that. In the meantime, if there's any feedback from you all, from the community, or from any independent research into the company, or the thought about that transferring in terms of land use to a wholesaling use, please don't hesitate to contact me. It's something we're monitoring because it's an important property. And again, in my view, there is some other potential interest out there that I think could be not very positive. So I'm concerned in that regard, just because I think it's important. What happens there will set kind of a tone for that corridor overall. So I don't know that they've gotten on the agenda yet for their appeal to be held. I think it will likely be in November at some time, but I'll continue to monitor. Yes.
So is the community now more receptive to the wholesaling application than they were before?
You know, I don't know that we saw a lot of opposition, frankly. I think when they presented in front of the council, there were a couple of remonstrators that had a couple of specific concerns, which they've addressed in the latest iteration that I've seen of their proposal. And again, I think as we discussed a little bit last time, one of the pieces of feedback from the remonstrators was to remove multifamily from the list of potential uses of the site, which they have now done. And another was another one or two remonstrators, I believe, were pretty adamant about having some manner of retail component. I think just by virtue of it having been a grocery store, I think there's still a lot of sort of public perception that that is a good use, even though we've seen a lot of the, Marsh aside, a lot of the grocery stores of that square footage have not survived in the current market. But there's been some community feedback about wanting some sort of retail component. I think the current prospective buyers that are the petitioners here have been tried to incorporate that into their plan, at least on a trial basis. So, having seen some of these things, is it a perfect scenario? No. But in my view, have they been pretty receptive and tried to make adjustments to what they've heard in terms of feedback? I think they have. Again, I don't see this as a perfect solution, but I will say they've been pretty specific about feedback that was heard from remonstrators and others, and how they've adjusted their plans accordingly, which I think is encouraging in a way. But so that's the update at this point. I think the need for additional time was. I'm not exactly sure what that was related to, if they're making further adjustments or what.
So we're not sure why they delayed it.
Not entirely. And I think it was mutual. So I don't know if that means DMD staff is kind of reconsidering or potentially going to change its report or recommendation. I'm not sure. But I'll continue to keep track of it. I've not seen an updated packet of information yet.
When you get the updated packet, could you email it to us?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I will do that. They've been pretty good at sending that to me and keeping me updated, so I'll do that. Moving on from there, the next topic is Shadeland Avenue and 4423 and 4399 Shadeland Avenue. Of course, there's a resolution below relative to authorizing transfer to the CDC, which we discussed to some degree at our last meeting. Prior to that, I did want to update you all, and I think you have in your packet a letter on behalf of Dan O'Toole, who is with us this afternoon. He's submitted an offer for the 4423 Shadeland property. Of course, we have previously authorized entering into a project agreement with Edwards Mechanical and Electrical, or at least authorized the concept of contributing that property toward that project, and are in the process of negotiating and potentially finalizing that agreement. I've been clear with Mr. O'Toole about that. He's a business owner in the area, noticed the property, looked me up, submitted an offer, and I wanted to make sure that you all had it to consider. And I'm glad to offer Mr. O'Toole a couple of minutes to tell you who he is and what his company is about. And he's agreed that he would answer any questions that you might have about his company while he's here. So,
Thank you, Kim.
Mr. O'Toole, yeah, thanks.
Thanks to Mary Jo and Kim, because I've been talking to them the last 30 days or so. So I'm Dan O'Toole. I actually own a building at 4193 Inglewood, so I'm already a neighbor, and I happen to notice this dilapidated building, and I wanted to find out more about it because we're growing. We have a company called Facility Maintenance USA. We do maintenance, construction, things like that here and across the country. And I'm very familiar with the neighborhood, great neighborhood. I've never had one issue at 4193 Englewood the whole time I've owned that. And I do business with a lot of the other business folks on the street. And when I became aware of this and started looking into it, I happened to contact the city because one of my buddies in the told me that you guys owned it. So I started looking into it, and I know it's been kind of lingering out there for quite a while, but I have a real plan for getting in there, converting it, making it look great, protecting it, upgrading the area, and contributing to what we're already doing in that area. I'm already a neighbor there, so, and I wanted to give you a monetary offer. I understand you're looking at gifting it. I wanted to step up to the plate. Not only do I want to make things happen quickly and make it great, but I wanted to monetarily pay for it, even in the face of knowing that you guys were conveying it possibly for free. I didn't want to piggyback on that. I wanted to step up and give a real offer. It's a fast track offer, $150,000 as is. There's just a couple of due diligence things that anybody would want to do. And I know talking to Kim, you have a comfort letter, from an environmental standpoint. Obviously, we would want to have that. And there's a couple other things that are on my offer there that I think are reasonable. Nothing that would really hold up the transaction at the end of the day. So I guess I'm a counter solution. Somebody that would step in, somebody that's already in the neighborhood, clean it up, get it going, make it look beautiful, paint it, and do all the things. And I'm ready to go quickly, so I appreciate your time and listening to me. I'm not trying to be invasive or anything. I just happen to want to come here and say hi. So I put a face with the name, right? Does anybody have any questions for me?
I got a question for you. So what exactly would you be doing with 4399 compared to what you do with 4193 Englewood?
We would be running our base of operation out of there, which would be having our personnel in there, some trucks, dispatching, things like having supplies, materials. It would be building out the office part that's, I don't know if you're familiar with the internal part of the building, but, getting it all up to snuff and making it great again.
And how many employees?
We have 12.
Cam, it was my understanding that the fire suppression system was the big expenditure, or one of the big expenditures there.
It certainly came up when we were working on a potential project with the Service Master franchise, and I think Dan and I had some conversation about that. We've been able to spend some time with Dan on the phone over the last several weeks, and I did point that out. I've also, under an access agreement, Dan's been in the property, I believe, and I did point out to him, we know that there's potentially, there appears to be a pretty clear leak in the roof. There's also, a prior would-be user ran into some issues with the fire suppression loop related to an ability to find a company just to kind of evaluate and certify it. Any potential contractor out there would only certify its viability if it replaced it entirely, which is a fairly big ticket item. I think I've heard $90,000 to $100,000. So I think I've passed that along to anybody that I've talked to since, just in the interest of disclosure, so that people know what they're walking into. And that maybe leads to a question, Dan. I know you've been in the property to be able to evaluate its condition and its needs. We know it's not in great shape.
Right.
Do you have a sense of what it might take in terms of construction budget to get it to where you would be able to use it and it would be a positive kind of looking facility?
Actually, if you want, I actually have an estimate that I put together. If you want, I have
Yep.
a copy for everyone.
Sure.
Is there a way I can come out there and hand these out? Kind of addresses everything that we were looking at doing and what our budget would be on that.
It's helpful, and as you and I discussed, and for the benefit of the commission, I think one of the things we always look for in terms of criteria and how we steward our resources as a commission, not just monetarily, but even the property that we control is maximizing sort of private investment and leveraging that through what we have. And so what you would be spending on the property to bring it up to a certain standard is important to us.
Right, right.
And part of what we want to see happen with the resources that we have.
Absolutely.
So you're looking at the 4399 piece,
No, 40,
the 4323,
44.
or 4423, I'm sorry. Okay.
499.
I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right piece.
Right.
Okay.
And how long do you think, I see your budget here of 643,000, how long do you think that would take you?
Probably be over a 6-month period to get to completion on that. We would we'd get in there quickly and you'd start seeing differences immediately.
And as far as staff goes, are you growing to the point where you would be hiring? Is there any training or anything that goes on?
There's
Your
as far as training, it's internal training.
Okay.
We're always looking to grow, obviously. We do have some big opportunities in front of us. We work throughout the country. We're working with PetSmart on taking on a big project for them. We're working with IKEA, and that's growing, and opportunities like that.
Okay.
And how long have you guys been in the 4100 block of Inglewood?
About 4 years.
4 years.
Yep.
And how long have you guys been in business?
Since 2013.
I would point out, just glancing down through this estimate, which I appreciate your providing. It does mention a fenced lot area.
Right.
And would that be, I'm assuming you were referring to the portion of the property that sort of abuts the building
Right, correct.
immediately to the south, which would be, as we'll discuss very shortly, a portion of the 4399 Shadeland property, which again, anybody that we have talked to about this 4423 Shadeland property has really kind of seen potential benefit from controlling that fenced-in lot that's immediately south. It just happens to be on a separate parcel, which is kind of the odd scenario here, and why we have discussed potentially conveying that to the CDC to control, because we are difficult to deal with in terms of real estate transactions by virtue of state law. So Dan and I have also discussed that, so that I'm only bringing that up because it is an ongoing subject of conversation. How do we make that fenced-in portion effectively part of the 4423 Sheriff's Garage parcel, while maintaining, as I said to you, I think we care about potential ingress, egress to a site that's behind there that we think is a future development site. So that kind of highlights that issue.
Absolutely.
And this company, as the others we've talked to, would also be interested in the same fenced-in lot.
Right.
Any other questions for Dan while he's here? Again, I thought it was important for you to have this.
Yeah.
It was a call out of the blue, really. I think Dan kind of stumbled on the property, realized we owned it, gave me a call. So we've been talking. He submitted this offer. I thought the only fair thing to do would be to bring it all to you, and he was kind enough to come so that we can answer any questions.
Thanks for allowing me to speak, and nice meeting you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, appreciate it.
Is there anything else along those lines, or can I, otherwise I'm going to...
No, I don't think there's anything
Thanks,
further.
everybody. See you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to new
What's your
business.
thoughts on this?
And I would, I mean, if there's any feedback, having seen this, heard this, I'm glad to discuss that here. Again, that the only thing I could do is probably say, be clear with him that we've talked to Edwards and we have a potential project and are working through a project agreement. And he was sort of unfazed and said, I'm going to submit an offer anyway, consider it as you will, and has been pretty just willing to sort of put things on paper for us to consider. And I'm glad to take your thoughts and feedback. In terms of my own input or impression, when we looked at what's the best way for this Shaylin garage to go, we're focused on a couple of key things, I think, as highlighted by what Edwards has proposed. Something trades related that's consistent with kind of the strategy makes sense, something that would improve the property visually and in terms of security, returned it to productive use. All of those things are good. We always, I think, want to maximize on the more quantitative level, maximize the employment opportunities offered by a new owner, and the wages of those, and then the added factor of potential for job training and growth of the company over time, and adding new employees and new opportunities is good. I think Edwards was looking to move 20 plus over immediately, plus the training center that would be generating new employees for it. So, I did look today at its proposed sort of rehabilitation budget, and they're looking at putting $800,000 or more into the property. But this is the first time I'd seen this estimate. It's closer to that number than I certainly knew ahead of time. I've been clear with Dan as well. We care more about the eventual use and the continued stewardship of that property and the turnaround and visual improvement, reactivation than we do really the purchase price. But he is offering to pay for the property, unlike Edwards. So I think there's certainly some evaluation to be done here, and I'd welcome your thoughts.
So I want to let you all know, so I know his attorney. And I'm actually very good friends with his attorney's wife, and they have donated to my political campaign. So I am going to recuse myself from voting on this completely, because I just don't want anything that comes out of us to look like it's shady at all. So I didn't know this was coming up or anything like that. Like you said, it just showed up. So I just don't feel comfortable voting on it. I just want to make sure you guys know that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I don't know that I'm calling for a vote anyway, and I'll leave it to the commission as to whether we want to. I would still value your thoughts about the merits of this proposal. Appreciating that you've disclosed that. I
just
still
don't
certainly
want
value your
anything to
opinion.
taint anything with the, I don't want anyone to think something's shady.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Mr. President,
Go ahead.
you offered to do an analysis which would allow us to provide a clear-cut decision, okay? And rather than just a verbal exchange, the T analysis, Edwards on one side.
Sure.
Let's just go through it.
Yeah.
And we can score the intangibles. The Trades District is a significant intangible. And that needs to be scored somehow. And what I'd like to ask the commissioners is, how would we score that? I mean, what's the rationale for scoring that? I shouldn't say that. I kind of know the rationale. How to do it is another.
I mean, the sort of the mechanics, right, of the, yeah.
So that we can make a decision and kind of walk away from this saying, here's the facts that we made this decision on. Is that that's what you were offering to do, I think, Cam?
Yeah, I'm glad to do that. If there's initial feedback beyond that, I'm glad to take that as well, whether it's about the mechanics or the value that we'd place on any certain criteria.
No, I think
We can certainly use this time to talk through that. But yes, I'm glad to. I think we really could, in some scenarios, you put out an RFP, a public offering for property, and you get multiple proposals, and you have to do exactly that. we did an RFP on this property. We got one proposal, didn't work out, so we're pivoting. We're now in a realm where we can unilaterally decide and not have to go back out to the public. But that doesn't, I still think there's merit now that we have two proposals that both have some positive aspects for me to analyze them for you, and I'm glad to do that. It adds, the 30 days between now and next meeting, but I don't think I think we need to take that time as opposed to just.
You think we need to take that time?
Yes.
I heard that right. Okay.
Now I do have
Along those lines,
yes.
is this drawing, I'm looking at this drawing. Is there something missing in this?
Is that was the map that was in your packet?
Yeah.
Missing in what regard? I don't think so.
I can't put my finger on it. It just doesn't look right. But is it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Cameron,
What aspect of it doesn't look right?
The access to the property behind it?
Okay.
I might comment.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Jerry,
I'm sorry.
I think that the fence that extends from parallel with the front of the old dealership building actually does go down to
It does.
the
The
south
property line.
line of 4399. That's why it looks funny.
Oh,
You don't see the property line bisecting that fence. But if you look at the sort of green spot that is the little in holding there and extend its south line all the way back, that's that would be the south line of what everybody talks about as being the appropriate property from 4399 to go with 4423.
so, may I?
yeah, go ahead.
How do I get back here? From here? What,
There is a driveway cut on Shageland right now.
right,
It should be visible in there.
right,
And if you,
on,
Right in the middle of
Yeah.
that
Shadeland?
so if.
western border.
If, there's a large building to the south that's almost up to its north property line.
is it down here?
Fence there,
The driveway cut?
and then there's
Yeah.
a fence around
This
the
is
43
half lot
Yeah, and the cut comes through here?
where the other HVAC company is, and if you just would
I think the
extend
cut's right here.
the south line of that other HVAC company straight back the ditch,
It's weird
that would
because
be
there's
the
this line
access
here,
parcel.
and these
that
are the same
figure
properties,
800
right?
feet wide.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
This is 43, 4423, and this is
It's not that parcel.
Oh,
Yeah,
that,
they're there.
that's why it's confusing.
okay, so
Okay.
where this little
4369.
cuts, where it turns north here,
Yes.
that's where the driveway is. It goes all the way back.
Chris.
Okay.
Could.
Yeah, I-
Could, Jerry. I think that was, could.
Could, yes, it would, the discussions here
Right,
were
right,
with TAM and
right.
apartment developers
Right,
have been about the southern two-thirds of that. yellow.
that's what I did, okay, that's what's
The
missing.
northern third that's behind.
I got you. I'm with you.
And landlocked would go with
That's what's missing.
4423.
Thank you, Chris.
In the way that everybody has discussed this move so far.
So as part of your evaluation, and in consideration of what we're trying to facilitate on the other end of this, so to speak, could we include that consideration? I mean, we need that access
I think the access is key. Yeah.
to develop all this other stuff. Okay. And that, to do what, to make what Chris was going to do, yeah, we couldn't do it without that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So I think we've always been, and as has Chris, very jealous of that 80 to 100-foot strip,
Right, right,
which is why we want to make sure that that's kind of preserved.
right.
There is, that portion north of, if you extend that 4369 southern property border
Right.
to the east, if you cut it off there, that Chris referred to in an email just today as the flag portion. That so using that because it's handy.
Okay.
That does not tend to have a lot of value from the access standpoint. I mean, it could host, we talked to a prior developer about maybe there's a clubhouse or maybe they have to take 4423 too. Really, it's just a matter of, if you picture, there's going to need to be some improvement on the other side to kind of meet up just to get in and out. But that's really all that matters. We can slice that off and, kind of cut the fence and continue it back to the back property line and have kind of a storage yard that's well screened by the little white house 4369 property from Shadeland, but also handy for a user of the type that we've been talking to about this property. And I wanted to point that out, that it's, regardless of which proposal we kind of go with that are on the table right now, both of them like the idea of having a fenced-in portion of that lot. So the transfer to the CDC would enable that to happen more efficiently than if we were to try to do it. Chris could then
Right.
partner with them to reparcel that and sell that, and then keep the ingress egress portion.
Right.
And I did, just to go back and research the law governing transfers of this type to a community development corporation, makes clear, and that's what's referenced in the resolution, that we can grant property at no consideration to a community development corporation that has, as part of its overarching corporate purpose, production of housing for low to moderate income individuals. We've seen that's been a lot of what the CDC has done, at least in this current iteration of the CDC in terms of partnership with Habitat and the city and the Redevelopment Commission. So it's certainly true and is in its bylaws. It also requires that the transferee, in this case the CDC, cause development of that property that would serve or benefit low to moderate income individuals in the area. So those strictures will kind of follow the property. And I've outlined in the resolution that there would be a sort of a memorandum of understanding that would probably record along with a deed or a project agreement that said, you have to do these things, and otherwise we have a right of reverter that we can execute, which I think we legally have to have, which keeps some semblance of control over where that goes. I would also anticipate that there would be a term that would require RDC approval of any developer that would be a partner of the CDC's or a potential buyer of that strip from the CDC in the future. So that's how I see kind of the making sure that it goes the right direction while enabling a new owner of 4423 to utilize that southern flag portion.
Okay. So what do we do with the resolution? In consideration of this new comparative analysis.
I think, in my view, I would ask you to consider going ahead and approving it.
Yeah.
Because regardless of where it goes, this is going to be the quickest path to make that parcel split, preserve the ingress egress strip, and be able to sell from the CDC. Then, I will be able to loop Chris in to conversations with whichever proposer we select to make sure that they work out a way for the split to happen and the timeline of that and any payment for that parcel, et cetera.
Mr. President, would you have comments regarding what Cam just?
Yeah, and I have one question. So Cam, can you bring me up to speed on what's going on with Edwards at the moment?
Sure. And I have a call with their counsel on Friday. This has been kind of a threshold issue. I sent them a draft project agreement. I've told them that we've previously passed a resolution that would authorize the grant of that property pursuant to some commitments on their side to Edwards to facilitate what they've said they would do. Their revisions of that project agreement incorporated 4399 and the fenced-in portion there. So I said, hold on, we got to pause and figure out how that goes because we've not publicly offered that. We can't just unilaterally sell it. So hence the discussion last month on this resolution. Apart from that, I think they had a couple of other comments. They've done some helpful things like consolidate their previous letters into an exhibit that has a list of potential commitments. So I think this is the main issue with driving Edwards, and this resolution otherwise also, I think, keeps their interest to the extent that we may pursue a project with Edwards. I think they'll want to see that the RDC said, yeah, this 4399 parcel can go to the CDC so that we can work out a way for that southern addendum, or annex to happen. That's where things stand. Well, then we can, if we were to then elect to pursue that project, finalize the project agreement and be moving. This has been the main sort of threshold issue with Edwards over the last couple of months.
And again, just so I'm clear, they don't want the whole 4399, they just want the flag portion, what we're.
Correct.
So,
I've been clear with everybody that I've spoken to about that property as a whole, that we are jealous of that.
Yeah.
Let's call it a 100-foot strip, the ingress egress strip from Shadeland back there. So that's something that is key to potential development behind there, and we want to keep it in some manner of control, because otherwise, we don't have a great seat at the table for that. So we're jealous of that. Anything north of that, I think, makes sense to us, and so they're clear. That's always been my line, is
sure.
at 4369 extended. South of there, we want to keep.
So,
Ally, did you have something?
Nope, I'm good.
Ray?
well, my next suggestion would I'll hold it for when we move to the new business and consideration of the resolution.
Any other thoughts on the offer from Dan O'Toole? I'm a little,
So
I
we
think
need a
it's-
motion to, do we need a motion to ask Cam to, no, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I'll do that.
No.
So
I think it's an interesting proposal, and
I think it's an
obviously
interesting proposal.
looking forward to the analysis and see where we ought to go.
I just don't want him to turn it into some kind of storage facility for his everywhere over the USA. I'd rather see employees in there. But it's an interesting offer.
Do you think we could reach back out to Mr. O'Toole and ask him to submit a proposal that documents what he's going to, he kind of verbally went through a little bit of it,
Yeah.
like, oh, I might have 8 or 12 people there, blah, blah, blah. But I think Edwards submitted a written proposal, if I'm not mistaken.
they had a couple of letters that summarized kind of their
Well, I remember the $800,000 itemization. Here, he didn't have anything about irrigations, not irrigation, the water suppression system.
True.
And that's a big number.
It is a big number. I mean,
He's going to take the 150 and say, hey, Cam, it's going to cost me 100 to do this, so,
Well, not to,
yeah, that's down the road.
I would say, I'll say this. I think the evaluation makes sense to take the time to do it, given that they're really, at the end of the day, this Facilities Maintenance USA is also sort of trades related. They do a lot of, maintenance of commercial facilities, construction work. And so there are elements on both sides to compare on a number of levels. I think we can assume at a baseline that regardless of which proposal, they'll be held to a project agreement that would not allow it to be, we're talking about terms that would commit them to a minimum sort of number of employees, a minimum amount of investment that they would prove through canceled checks and invoices that they actually incurred the money. I think that's where this will all funnel down to, regardless of which proposal. It will be a project agreement that will document where this property is going, that you will all see and have an opportunity to vet and approve, like with the Freegee project.
on the one hand, you've got Edwards, mechanical, electrical,
Yes.
who is training people to the point that they can achieve a certification which has market value.
Yes.
On the other hand, and I'm not trying to pound on our new entrant for a moment, but when he says, well, my training will be internal. That causes me pause for a second. I would want it, that would be a significant difference to me.
I would agree.
Okay.
And having heard and talked to Paul with Edwards about their vision for this training facility, it's a pretty robust
Okay.
operation. It's something they've done in Cincinnati to great success. It does lead to literally a certification,
Right.
And a yes, a marketable skill or path to the gainful employment within Edwards, which is a pretty dynamic company too. So yes, I would agree.
Thank you.
That is totally different. That's apples and oranges.
Which I think as a city is our goal, to get the training program up and running and the certificates.
Absolutely.
But this is still an interesting.
It is. Yeah. We're not there yet on either. Okay.
All right, do we need to vote on anything here?
I think, at least in my view, not until we get to new business. And I would encourage that you consider the resolution today because we can get that moving. And I think it will be important regardless of which proposal. So in the interim, we can work out things with the CDC should you approve that resolution in terms of the MOU and the terms. And, we know what we care about. We just need to document it. While I also then work out a kind of a comparison of the two proposals for the next meeting. But I think both of them have interest in this same flag portion. And I think transfer to the CDC is the quickest way to make that possible.
New business? Cam?
That's
You just did it.
that's my summary. Yeah, I think so. This is probably the quickest path to making that split and having the flag portion go with 4423 and keeping track of that ingress egress strip for future development.
Mr. President.
Motion.
No, I have a comment before I would make a motion.
Please.
Thank you. I would like to see, if it's okay with everybody, I would like to see an addendum or an attachment to this resolution that shows us what we're talking about. Here's the property.
The map.
Yeah. And shows, we're doing this so that we can provide an access from Shadeland Avenue back into this other available property that the CDC would be developing. Okay? And that's just not, that would just make me, I don't have any issue with the resolution other than
You think a map as Exhibit A, just depicting it?
see it.
And that makes sense to me. The one convenient thing is that parcel is all addressed at 4399. So calling it that means that, but I have zero problem adding that map as an exhibit.
So if you could, I'm fine with, and I would make a motion to approve this based on the fact that the, I don't know what you would call it, an addendum would be included.
Delineating the area.
Yeah. It would be included by reference so that you'd have to, the only thing, would you have to change the resolution just a little bit to say reference addendum attached or something like that? Or can that be done at the end?
Here's what I would likely do.
Okay.
In that first recital paragraph, real property commonly known as 4399 Shadeland Avenue, Lawrence, Indiana, as depicted in the map attached here too as Exhibit A, the property. And that inline definition then carries throughout the rest of the resolution. I'm glad to make that change, and we can understand that that's what you're approving is this resolution with that change, and I can do a new page 1 with that to match with your signature.
President, are you okay with doing it that way?
I am.
Okay. I would make a motion that we approve resolution number 6-2019.
I'll have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Cam, when you update this, can you send it out to us? The new map attached?
Sure.
Is there any other business to come before the commission?
CDC's annual dinner is Thursday evening. I think you talked about that before the meeting started, right? There's the plug for Chris.
Pam, I've heard, back to Williams Comfort and Air, I heard that they're leasing out part of the building to other companies?
Yeah, what's the square footage? I think they have about 60 to 70,000 square feet under roof that they've now purchased from Icor. Their current, it's good, it's good size. Their current needs they don't currently require quite that much space. They believe, I think they've said as early as 5 to 10 years from now, that they will need the whole building. And they were attracted to it because it's bigger than they currently need and they're growing. In the meantime, they do plan to sublease a portion of the warehousing space at the northern end to other potential tenants, probably in the neighborhood of 10,000 square feet, 10 to 15, which it's frankly not uncommon that I get calls from people looking for 5 to 10,000 square feet of warehousing space. So I tend to think it's probably pretty marketable, and maybe that is kind of a startup space for a company that's going to go ahead and continue to grow and expand here in the future. So that's been my understanding all along, and I tend to think that's perfectly fine and maybe even positive.
Maybe this Cook Air, maybe they're, I don't know how big they are, but maybe they can.
Yeah.
26th, Jerry.
Is it the 26th? Okay. That's what,
All right, any other business? And the next meeting is Tuesday, November 26th. If there's no other business before the commission, I have a motion to adjourn this.
So moved.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody? All right.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.